What if all it took was a modest, and I mean modest, improvement in a single facet of the game for your favorite team to significantly improve this coming season? Good morning to you. Good Thursday morning. I'm Dejan Kovacevic of DK Pittsburgh Sports, and this is Daily Shot of Penguins. It comes your way bright and early every weekday. If you're into football and or baseball, I also offer daily shots of Steelers and Pirates in the same place that you found this. Check this out. Going through some numbers here based on a thought that I had early yesterday as to whether or not I over-discuss or overinflate the impact of that awful power play from the 2023-24 season. Is it blown up just because of who the participants are, what the expectations were going into the season? Whoa, you got Erik Karlsson. You don't even have room for all these guys. You could send 2 units out there that are better than almost anybody else's and all that other stuff. And then, of course, it amounted to, well, you saw it. But is it something that's overplayed, whereas the rest of the stuff that went wrong with the team was more of what dragged it down, or was it the power play that did it? And you were never going to know that answer, at least not definitively. My feeling on this is that if the power play had opened the season with something of a swagger, then you would have seen and heard and felt even a lot more confidence about this group, not just from within, but even around them, the way the crowd in Pittsburgh would respond to them. There'd be a new respect factor. There'd be a, wow, okay, maybe we aren't that team, but maybe we'll do it this way. Instead, just poof, the one thing that you were the most stoked about went up in flames. So, factor in the intangible component to it. You need to believe, again, both internally and externally, that the team has a real strength, has something that you fear as an opponent. Not on paper, but in reality. So I went for reality here. I dug up some numbers. The Penguins' power play clicked, I guess you could say, at a 15.3% rate last season. That was 30th out of 32 teams, with only the Blue Jackets and the Flyers finishing behind them. So what I tried to look at here were numbers that would have the Penguins just in the middle of the pack, okay? Or maybe a little bit above the middle of the pack. What I was looking for is a 20% conversion rate. And that would put them in the 18th spot based on where everybody finished last season. 18th. It's not, that's not great, but if you're in any of the 20s, you could make it as high as 16 or 15. And that's just run of the mill. That's nothing special. And I'm going to say this one more time for effect, repeating from last summer, that if you put together a power play with Sidney Crosby, Evgeny Malkin, Chris Letang, Erik Karlsson, and damn near anybody else in existence, you could pull somebody out of the stands, you could get an usher, you could get a security guard. You should be at a 20% rate. This episode is brought to you by Bet Online, your number one source for all your summer sports needs this season, from Major League Baseball, golf, NHL, NBA playoffs. Get the latest odds and lines, including all team matchups, player props, odds on just about everything that's out there. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to get in on the action. Bet Online, where the game starts. So let's presume that between the changes, between Michael Bunting coming along and being the bumper guy, between having David Quinn come over as a coach, a new guy to look at the power play with a fresh set of eyes, and what I'm expecting, by the way, will be real autonomy because Mike Sullivan respects the heck out of this guy. The question then becomes, how many additional goals do you score? What does that add to your season ledger? I'm not going to get super intricate, with the formulas here. I'm going to keep this pretty simple. The Penguins scored only 40 power play goals last season. I'm not making these numbers up. They're still as ridiculous as they were when you were watching them. 40 power play goals in 82 games. If you're producing at a 20% clip or so, you're going to end up with an additional 15, 18 goals on the season. And I know that doesn't excite me either, but they're 15 to 18 goals that don't come at any cost. Meaning, if you think about it, although there is the occasional shorthanded goal that this team has been known to give up, if you fail on the power play, basically what you've done is you've wasted 2 minutes of hockey. You haven't done anything to really hurt yourself other than not scoring. So every time you score, it's just a plus. So from there, I looked at the Penguins' goal differential, and I don't mean power play or shorthanded or whatever. I just mean their overall goal differential last season, because I see goal differential and run differential and points differential in hockey and baseball and football as being very, very telling as to the overall quality and projectability. There's my 10-cent word for the morning of that particular team. The Penguins were a very modest +4 in the goal differential area. +4, that was it. They scored 255, they allowed 251. If you get into goal differential that is in the range of, +20 or so, you are a playoff team. It is the difference between making the playoffs, meaning for the past team, and not. All the Penguins needed were a couple of power play goals, and maybe none of that big surge at the end would have even been necessary. Now, if you really want to have fun with this exercise, then go ahead and factor in what this power play should have done and what it should do still, regardless of the average age of the participants this coming season. When we come back, J1Q. Today's J1Q comes from Chris, and he says, DK, I agree with you that this summer's approach by Kyle Dubas is a slight improvement over last year's. Just to amend this and interrupt you for a second, Chris, I haven't said that it's a slight improvement. I've said that it's a massive improvement, but if you want to say slight, you can say slight. Chris continues, I'm also on board with Dubas' strategy of acquiring more draft picks and avoiding overspending in free agency. Relying on Braden Yeager, the only prospect with a good chance of being a top 6 player, is not a viable solution, though. Dubas surely doesn't believe that the team's going to be competitive by next year if that's the plan. What's missing is a gamble on younger players seeking a fresh start with new teams. Players like Anthony Beauvillier, Sebastian Aho, Matthew Grzelcyk don't fit that mold. The Penguins should consider using some of their picks and prospects to acquire young players who can contribute now and over the next 3 years. Some of them, like Morgan Frost, Nick Robertson, Oliver Wahlstrom, are unhappy with their current teams and could be acquired at bargain prices. I see where you're going here, Chris, and I did about halfway through that. And I believe that it's a concept that's worth considering. I think it's something that if you're Dubas and you're doing your full diligence from an analytical viewpoint, even more so than just a pure hockey viewpoint, you owe it to yourself to find out if such a scenario makes sense. However, here's the one issue that I have with the scenario that you brought up, because what you want, just to make sure that I'm reading this right and say it out loud for everybody else, what you want is for the Penguins to give up, either really young prospects or, really good draft picks so that they can get really young players who can play now. And yeah, again, I can see where that sounds attractive. I can also see where it sounds like it would be a real challenge to make that happen from the transactional standpoint. Beyond that, again, here's my issue. You say that Beauvillier, Aho, Grzelcyk, and other guys in that age range don't really fit what you want to do. And I couldn't disagree more. I just couldn't. I'm sorry. I'm not saying that any of them are going to be a perfect fit. I'm not saying that any of them will even make the team. I mean, I'm sure they will, but I'm not pumping them up. But I love the idea of bringing in 26, 27, 28, even 29-year-olds who still have their maximum wheels, who still have their energy, who still have their enthusiasm. I don't know what the magical line of demarcation is between what I just said and, the opposite of it. I don't know if it happens at age 31. I don't know if it happens at age 35. I don't know if it ever happens with some guys. But I do know that a player in his 20s, anywhere in his 20s, has no excuse for not being at their physical peak in any professional sport. And I'll put that forth mostly from a football standpoint, because football exposes you like no other. You see running backs are done when they're 30. Wide receivers can be done even earlier. And that's because you have to be on top of everything. You have to be exactly what you were at the NFL scouting combine, or at least really, really close to it. And as soon as you're not, you're just not worth it to the team anymore. Not at those positions, not in that sport. In hockey, you've still got it when you're in your 20s. So if we're operating from the same time frame that we've been discussing for a while here, and I think it's a realistic and fair one, that it's the remainder of Sidney Crosby's career should he end up signing a 3-year extension. So it's 3 years. So if you bring in a player who's 26, 27 years old, or whatever it is in that range, there's no reason for them to be fading out or becoming part of your old player problem. Not in that time span anyway. But yeah, would I like your scenario? Sure, it'd be really fun and entertaining, and I'm sure most of the fans would love that, but I don't know that it's feasible or even necessary. I appreciate the question. I appreciate everybody listening to Daily Shot of Penguins. We're going to do another one of these tomorrow.